In the shadows of history, there are truths so disturbing that entire empires worked tirelessly to erase them. The Ottoman Empire, remembered for its palaces, its vast armies, its golden age of conquest, was also a world filled with secrets too dangerous to record. Behind the walls of Istanbul's grand harems and within the chambers of the sultans, there were punishments and rituals that were never meant to see the light of day. Not because they lacked importance, but because they revealed a darkness that could stain the legacy of an empire forever. Imagine the wives of fallen warriors, women taken from battlefields, their lives shattered in a single night. History tells us little about their fate, but whispers still echo from ancient records, fragments left behind like shadows on stone. These whispers speak of punishments so cruel, so unspeakable, that scribes were forbidden to even write them down. What could be so horrifying, so unimaginable, that even the conquerors who celebrated bloodshed in open war dared not record it? The silence itself is the clue. For when history is silent, it is rarely out of mercy. It is out of fear. Fear that the truth, if known, would unravel the empire's carefully built image of glory and order. Behind every triumph carved into marble, behind every victory sung in poems, there were hidden tears, hidden screams, hidden acts that the world was never supposed to witness. Tonight we open the door that was locked for centuries. We step into the forbidden corridors where secrets lived and died. This is not the story of battles, nor of crowns, nor of power alone. It is the story of what power does in the dark. The story of punishments inflicted not on soldiers or kings, but on those who could not fight back. What you are about to hear was never allowed to be written, but it was lived. And that truth, no matter how deeply buried, has a way of clawing its way back to the surface. The Ottoman Empire, vast and unyielding, stretched across 3 continents like a shadow cast by a setting sun. Its banners fluttered over deserts, mountains, and seas, proclaiming dominion to the world. Yet beyond the majesty of its mosques, the brilliance of its scholars, and the thunder of its armies, there existed another story, one deliberately hidden, one never meant for open eyes. When soldiers marched and wars consumed the frontiers, it was not only land and treasure that changed hands. Lives were uprooted, destinies shattered in the dust of battle. Among the spoils of conquest, one figure remained the most silent, the most forgotten. The wives of defeated warriors. To be the wife of a fallen man was to live with a wound that would never heal. For when their husbands fell, these women were not granted freedom, nor dignity, nor mourning. Instead, they were pulled into the empire's hidden machinery, a world behind veils and walls where fate was dictated by whispers in the palace corridors. No record was kept, no poems written, no monuments raised. Their existence was reduced to silence, a silence so heavy it has weighed on history itself. Imagine the battlefield after the clash of steel has ended, the air thick with smoke, the cries of the dying fading into a hollow silence. In the center, the victors gather spoils, weapons, gold, and bodies. Yet somewhere on the edges, women stand in trembling clusters. Their eyes red with tears, their children clinging to them. They know that death for their men was only the beginning. For them, a darker chapter was about to unfold. They were herded like shadows through the camps, moved across miles of hostile land, stripped not of clothes alone, but of identity, culture, and name. The empire that conquered them demanded not merely submission of territory, it demanded submission of the spirit. These women became living trophies, carried not for celebration but for warning, for punishment, for erasure. Within Istanbul, the heart of the empire, life moved to a rhythm of grandeur. Minarets pierced the sky, markets overflowed with spices and silk. Scholars debated theology beneath marble arches. But tucked behind this glittering facade were doors that never opened to the public, doors that led to courtyards of silence and chambers filled with secrets. It was here, in these hidden spaces, that the wives of defeated warriors were brought. Their arrival was not announced with ceremony. No triumphal parade marked their fate. Instead, it was quiet, almost surgical. A few guards, a few servants, a few whispers, and suddenly they were gone from the world's memory. History, so eager to celebrate conquest, had no place for their stories. Inside these walls, time did not flow as it did outside. For the women, days blurred into nights, nights into endless waiting. The silence was punctuated by sounds that made the blood run cold. A scream muffled in the distance, a sob quickly silenced, the shuffle of footsteps approaching in the dark. Each moment was a question. Would they be chosen? Would they vanish next? The Ottomans understood the power of fear. They did not need chains of iron when chains of uncertainty could bind more tightly. A woman left to wonder about her fate suffered more than one who knew her doom. And so the silence became its own punishment. But even in silence, memory clung. They remembered their homes, the laughter of children before the wars, the strength of husbands who now lay buried beneath foreign soil. These memories became their rebellion, small flames that the empire sought to snuff out, to break them fully, to erase even the memory of what they once were. That was the unspoken goal. The palace itself seemed to conspire in this erasure. Its long corridors were lined with marble so polished they reflected distorted shadows, as though reminding the women that they no longer recognized themselves. Courtyards overflowed with fountains whose waters whispered endlessly, drowning out cries that might have risen from hidden chambers. Even the air smelled of incense, sweet but suffocating, a perfume designed to disguise decay. And yet within this suffocating beauty, terror thrived. The women were not equals in this world. They were not mothers, wives, or individuals anymore. They were tokens, reminders of conquest, silent warnings to those who might resist the empire's power. For every wife broken behind palace walls, an entire village outside would think twice before rising again. This was not punishment for crimes committed. This was punishment for loyalty, for love, for belonging to a man who dared to stand against the Sultan's will. To be chosen as the wife of a warrior was to carry honor once, but under Ottoman rule that same honor became a curse. And so the empire's streets bustled, its scholars wrote, its soldiers conquered, while behind veils of secrecy, a quieter war raged. It was not fought with swords or muskets, but with silence, fear, and cruelty disguised as order. It left no battlefield scars, no ruins of stone, only unseen wounds carried by women who history pretended never existed. This is their story, the one the empire buried, the one scribes were forbidden to write, the wives of fallen warriors, condemned not for their deeds but for the men they loved. Inside the hidden chambers of the Ottoman palaces, fear became the air they breathed. The wives of defeated warriors were not killed, yet they were not allowed to live as they once had. They were ghosts, walking in silence, waiting for a fate that was never spoken aloud. Every corridor echoed with whispers of what happened to those before them. Some vanished overnight, never to be seen again. Others returned broken, their eyes hollow, their spirit erased. It was not chains or blades that crushed them. It was the cruelty of uncertainty, the slow torture of not knowing when or how the punishment would fall. The empire wanted more than victory on the battlefield. It wanted to erase its enemies from memory itself. Breaking the women was part of that conquest. Each silent scream became a warning, echoing far beyond the palace walls. Villages learned to fear, to submit, for they knew the price of resistance was not just death in battle. It was something far worse, inflicted on those left behind. And so history stayed silent. The records praised the conquests, the riches, the sultans. But the truth, what happened behind those closed doors, was left in shadows, too horrifying to ever be written. The silence finally broke. One by one, the women were summoned into chambers no outsider ever saw. What waited inside was not justice, not mercy, but the empire's most chilling weapon, punishment designed not to kill the body, but to crush the spirit forever. They were stripped of their names, their honor, their place in the world. Some were forced into servitude, others into fates so unbearable that even the scribes of the empire were forbidden to write them. What happened behind those doors was erased deliberately, leaving only whispers. And those whispers were darker than any written word could ever be. The Ottomans understood. A sword can kill a man, but fear can rule a people for generations. By breaking the wives of warriors, the empire did more than punish, it erased entire legacies. Husbands may have fought bravely, but their memory was drowned in the cries of those they left behind. And so the palaces stood in splendor, their fountains still flowing, their marble shining. While in the shadows, unseen scars grew deeper, never allowed to heal. The world saw only power. The women lived only terror. The silence finally shattered. One by one, the wives of fallen warriors were summoned into hidden chambers, rooms no record described, doors no outsider ever saw. They walked in trembling, their footsteps echoing across marble floors, knowing only one truth: no one ever returned the same. Some vanished forever, Others returned hollow, their eyes lifeless, their voices gone, as if their very souls had been stripped away. What happened inside those walls was so horrific that even the empire's scribes were forbidden to write it. Silence became the weapon, mystery became the punishment. The Ottomans knew a sword could kill a man, but fear could conquer generations. By destroying the women left behind, they erased not just warriors but entire legacies. Husbands' honor turned to ashes, their memory drowned in the screams of those who once carried their name. The palace sparkled with beauty in daylight, but beneath its fountains and marble lay shadows soaked in terror. The world saw only power. The women lived only nightmares. This was not just cruelty. It was conquest perfected, not of land but of the human spirit. When the chambers grew silent again, the world outside moved on. Victories were celebrated, palaces expanded, poems written in praise of sultans. Yet behind the veils of history, the cries of the forgotten women lingered like ghosts. They were erased from records, their names lost, their pain buried under marble and silence. But silence does not mean absence. Their suffering became a shadow that stretched far beyond the palace walls. Villages whispered their fate, mothers warned their daughters, and men who once dreamed of rebellion lowered their swords in fear. The empire did not need to speak of the punishment. It lived in the minds of everyone who dared to resist. And so the wives of fallen warriors became more than victims. They became symbols, symbols of how power can break the spirit, how cruelty can outlive the battlefield, how racism and conquest can twist victory into something darker. History chose not to write their names, but their story survives in whispers, in fragments, in the unease that still lingers when one asks, what truly happened behind those doors? Perhaps the better question is this: if such truths were buried in the past, how many more remain hidden in the shadows of history today?